Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the Compassionate, the Merciful. My name is Ibrahim Hooper. I'm National Communications Director with the Council on American Islamic Relations. We'll first have our MC, Zahra Bilou. She's the Executive Director of our San Francisco Bay Area office. And I'll let her begin, and then we'll have several speakers, and we'll be out of here very quickly because I know you're on deadlines, and this was very short notice. So, Zahra Bilou.
Greetings of peace. Thank you all for coming. My name is Zahra Bilou. I am the Executive Director of the San Francisco Bay Area Office of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations. We're gathered here tonight to hear from several speakers who will comment on Donald Trump's recent bigoted anti-Muslim remarks. The first speaker this evening is Nihad Awad, CAIR National Executive Director.
Thank you, Zahra. And thank you all for coming. Last night I was watching President Obama's speech rejecting Islamophobia, calling for national unity. I myself and millions of American Muslims were assured by the mature, responsible tone that came from the commander-in-chief. And of course, the president has reacted to quite few statements coming from some politicians calling for targeting the Muslim community and targeting the Islamic faith just because we're Muslim. And today, just in the afternoon, we were extremely shocked to hear Donald Trump calling for total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the U.S. This is outrageous, coming from someone who wants to assume the highest office in the land. It is reckless and simply un-American. Donald Trump sounds more like a leader of a lynch mob than a great nation like ours. He and others are playing into the hands of ISIS. This is exactly what ISIS wants from Americans, to turn against each other. And for that, Donald Trump and other candidates who are targeting American Muslims are doing great service to ISIS, the ones that we're all find as common enemy. And who are we as American Muslims? American Muslims are part of the brick and mortar of this great nation. We are first responders, doctors, police, firefighters, social workers, teachers, members of the armed forces. This is who American Muslims are. And we stand today firm, united as Americans, against stigmatization, against Islamophobia, against ISIS, and against terrorism. And to those who would divide this great nation, whether through the ISIS, Daesh work, like through their terror work, or through Donald Trump's words, our message is one, that they will not succeed. They will not succeed in dividing Americans. Donald Trump has made vicious and unfounded claims against the American Muslim community when he said that he saw thousands of Muslims celebrating the 9/11 attacks. Trump cannot substantiate his allegations, despite the fact that many of his supporters are calling him to say that he was right. American Muslims were weeping. American Muslims were mourning. American Muslims were among the first responders, and American Muslims also were victims on 9/11. Donald Trump should not play with the emotions of the misguided few in our nation and prey on the fear and fear-mongering. He has suggested that Muslims should be singled out for surveillance, that mosques should be closed, that American Muslims should be forced to register as part of a national database and carry special IDs. His ideas are not just unconstitutional, they are un-American. This rhetoric echoes the policies enacted by Nazi Germany against the Jews. Have we learned anything from history, Mr. Trump? These are not just words. Trump and Carson's mainstreaming of Islamophobia in the election is inciting discrimination, hate crimes, violent attacks against Muslims and mosques. This inflammatory rhetoric is putting the lives of millions of American Muslims and their children in danger. We cannot entrust our nation's safety and security to someone who lies and insists on lying when corrected by national media and researchers and historians. Since the Paris attack, CAIR has documented numerous violent attacks against mosques and American Muslims, including shootings, vandalism, bomb threats, to name a few. We call on the Republican National Committee to denounce Islamophobia and anti-Muslim rhetoric. If such hatred and bigotry is not outright rejected by the GOP, then it will be part of its legacy for many years to come. Having said all of this, we invite Donald Trump and other candidates to actually meet American Muslims. Go and visit a mosque. Meet with Muslim Americans and see that they are job creators, not just job takers. They are the ones who are building this nation like every other American. American Muslims are well educated, well positioned in our society. As I said in my earlier remarks, they are physicians, teachers, doctors, engineers, managers. They are contributing to our great nation through economic development every day. Why do you want to stigmatize them, Donald Trump? Why do you want to push them to the margin? Why do you want them, if they travel overseas, not to come back? This is not who we are as Americans. We call on the federal government, in light of all of these attacks that we see, to provide protection to the Muslim community and their institutions. And we call on our thought leaders, clergy, and political leaders to stand by the Muslim community today. This is a historic moment. We should not be led by fear, and we should not let fear-mongers win, because they play into the hands of ISIS. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Corey Saylor, CAIR's Director of the Department to Monitor and Combat Islamophobia.
Good evening, everyone. Just going to make a few points about some of the issues that are cited in Mr. Trump's release from today. First and foremost, it cites a study conducted by the Center for Security Policy, which is headed by Frank Gaffney. This is a very well-known core member of the U.S. Islamophobia network. To give you some ideas of where Mr. Gaffney is coming from, he once alleged that a crescent in a U.S. military patch was, quote, code-breaking evidence, unquote, of U.S. submission to Islam. The FBI once called a Center for Security Policy report, or at least cited that it used outdated information and overstated the threat that it offered to pose. Mr. Gaffney has also called for the reinitiation of the House Un-American Activities Committee, which was the McCarthy-era committee that was discredited and cast aside and seen by history as one of the most un-American things in our nation's history. The poll itself that's being cited in Mr. Trump's release was actually looked at by Georgetown University's Bridge Initiative. And when they finished looking at it, they put out a release that said the poll is grounded in bias, riddled with flaws. And the main thing that I want to point out to you from that review is the poll itself is what's called a non-probability-based opt-in online survey. And according to the body, this is citing Georgetown University's Bridge Initiative, according to the body that sets ethical standards for polling, which is known as the American Association for Public Opinion Research, opt-in surveys cannot be considered representative of the intended population, in this case Muslims. And it goes on to talk about the fact that the pollsters simply don't know who's answering their questions, which is part of the reason why it can't be considered representative. So we can add to that, this is going off of Center for Security Policy, the 14th Amendment says that American citizens get to return to this country. So I was just recently in Australia attending a conference on Islamophobia and radicalization. 14th Amendment says I get to come back into this country. So we have Donald Trump citing a core member of the U.S. Islamophobia network, a poll that does not fit the standards set by the group that oversees polls in this country, and then also, once again, making statements that are not in line with the Constitution. Let's think about who else he's talking about excluding besides American citizens. The interpreters that helped our troops overseas, Muslims who fought alongside our troops overseas and who are the main victims of ISIS, business people coming to our country to invest their money in our different states and in our nation. He's talking about excluding all of these people from entry into our country. That's fear-mongering at its worst. And again, Mr. Trump sounds like the leader of a lynch mob, not of the United States. Thank you.
Our third and final speaker is Osama Jamal, Secretary General of the United States Council of Muslim Organizations.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Osama Jamal, spells O-U-S-S-A-M-A. Last name is J-A-M-M-A-L. The U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations is a coalition of several national and local Muslim organizations representing hundreds of local chapters and offices and community centers and mosques and relief organizations and youth centers throughout the country. The U.S. Council is outraged by the statement of Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump's statement is outrageous because it is coming from someone who is bidding on the presidency of the United States, a post that should have and stands on the high moral values of this country, which is founded on. We are very disappointed by Mr. Trump, who continues to make such bigoted statements and remarks to advance his bid and his candidacy for the United States of America. Unfortunately, Mr. Trump does not recognize or does not want to recognize the fact that Muslims are the very victim of ISIS and the like-minded, and he wants to victimize the American Muslim community twice. Fortunately, American Muslims do not see and view America through his views, and those who stand and hold similar views as his. American Muslims look and see through the eyes of our fellow citizen Americans who flooded us with emails of support and standing with us. This is America. This is what we see. And this is what America is going to continue to be seen and continue to be loved. There is no place for a person who wants to advance his political agenda over the very values of this country, which is founded on freedom, democracy, equality, and democracy. So, Mr. Trump, we believe you are not going to succeed, and the American people and the American values are going to win over your bigoted remarks. Thank you.